He bought the woman no one would touch. Then the cowboy discovered her healing hands. He bought the woman no one would touch. Then the cowboy discovered her healing hands. A cowboy sci-fi story in 4 parts. == Part 1. The auction == The twin sons of Dustfall Prime beat down on the crowded marketplace like hammers on an anvil. Jake Thornwood pulled his wide-brimmed hat lower over his eyes as he walked through the dusty streets. His cybernetic arm whirred softly with each movement, a constant reminder of the mining accident that had nearly killed him 3 years ago. The frontier planet of Dustfall Prime attracted all kinds of people. Most came looking for riches in the mineral-rich canyons, others came to escape their past. Jake had come for both reasons. He stopped at the edge of the crowd gathered in the central square. A wooden platform stood in the center, and on it was the reason everyone had gathered. The slave auction was about to begin. Jake hated these auctions. Slavery had been outlawed in the core systems for decades, but out here on the frontier, the law was whatever the strongest man said it was. He had not come to buy. He had come to see if any of the faces belonged to people he once knew, people who might need help. The auctioneer, a fat man named Griggs, stepped onto the platform. His voice boomed across the square, amplified by the old speaker system mounted on poles. "Ladies and gentlemen, prospectors and pioneers, welcome to today's offering." The crowd pressed forward. Most were rough men, their clothes covered in red dust from the mines. A few wore the clean suits of colony administrators. They all had one thing in common. They had credits to spend. "Our first item today," Griggs continued, "is a strong young man, perfect for heavy labor in the deep mines." "Who will start the bidding?" Jake watched as the first few slaves were brought out and sold. Each time, his jaw tightened. Each time, he reminded himself that he could not save everyone. His small ranch barely supported him and his robot helper, Rusty. Taking on another mouth to feed would be foolish. Then she was brought out. The woman stumbled onto the platform, her chains rattling. She wore a torn gray dress that had once been white. Her long dark hair hung in tangled waves around her face. But it was her skin that made the crowd gasp and pull back. Purple veins ran across her exposed arms and neck like twisted roots beneath her pale skin. They pulsed faintly with an inner light. Her eyes, when she lifted her head, were completely silver. No pupils, no iris, just reflective silver that caught the sunlight. "What in the blazes is that?" someone shouted from the crowd. "Contamination," another voice yelled. "She's been exposed to the purple ore." The crowd stepped back even further. Jake knew what purple ore was. Everyone on Dustfall Prime knew. It was the most valuable mineral on the planet, used in faster-than-light engines across the galaxy. It was also deadly. Exposure to raw purple ore caused mutations, madness, and death. Always death. Griggs held up his hands. Now. The woman is perfectly safe. "She's been tested. The contamination is stable. Stable don't mean safe," someone shouted back. "How long she got before she drops dead?" another voice called out. The woman stood quietly on the platform. She did not beg or cry. She simply stood there, her silver eyes looking at nothing and everything. Griggs wiped sweat from his forehead. "The doctors say she could live for months, maybe years. And she's strong. She worked in the deep mines for 2 years before the contamination took hold." "2 years in the deep mines?" a voice laughed. "Then she's used up already." Jake studied the woman more closely. Despite the purple veins and strange eyes, she did not look sick. She stood straight, her breathing steady. Most people exposed to purple ore were dead within weeks, their bodies destroyed from the inside out. "Starting bid is 50 credits, Griggs announced. 50 credits for a worker who knows the mines. Silence filled the square. 50 credits was almost nothing for a slave. Healthy workers usually went for 500 or more. 40 credits. Griggs lowered the price. Still, no one bid. The crowd began to disperse. No one wanted to risk contamination, no matter how cheap the price. Jake felt something pull at his chest. Maybe it was pity. Maybe it was the way the woman stood there with quiet dignity despite everything. Maybe it was the fact that he had been broken once too, and someone had given him a second chance. 20 credits! Griggs sounded desperate now. 20 credits and she's yours! 20 credits. The crowd turned to stare at him. Griggs's eyes widened in surprise, then quickly narrowed with greed.
"We have 20 credits? Do I hear 25? No one else bid."
"Who would? 20 credits going once?" "Going twice. Sold to the man in the brown duster." Jake paid the credits and walked onto the platform. Up close, he could see that the woman's silver eyes were tracking him. There was intelligence there, awareness. She was not lost to madness as most contamination victims were. Griggs handed him the chain attached to her wrist collar. "Pleasure doing business, Thornwood. Hope she lasts you at least a few weeks." Jake ignored him. He looked at the woman. "Can you walk?" She nodded once. Her voice when she spoke was hoarse from disuse. "Yes. Then let's get out of here." They walked through the crowd together. People stepped aside, giving them a wide berth. Some made signs against evil. Others just stared. Jake kept his eyes forward and his hand away from the chain.
He would not drag her like an animal.
His speeder bike waited at the edge of town. It was an old model, held together with spare parts and stubbornness. Jake climbed on and gestured to the seat behind him. "Climb on my ranch is an hour from here." The woman hesitated, then sat behind him. She did not hold on. "You might want to grab something," Jake said. "The road gets rough." Carefully, her hands gripped the edges of his coat. They lifted off, the speeder's engines humming as they rose above the dusty streets of Dustfall Prime. As they flew across the red desert toward his ranch, Jake wondered what exactly he had just done. He had bought a dying woman, contaminated with purple ore, for reasons he could not fully explain. He did not know it yet, but that decision would change everything. The desert stretched out before them, endless and red under the twin suns. In the distance, the purple glow of the deep mines pulsed like a heartbeat in the mountains. And on the speeder bike, the woman with silver eyes and purple veins looked at the back of her new owner's head and felt something she had not felt in years. Hope. Equal sign, equal sign, equal sign. Part 2 outline, the discovery. Equal sign, equal sign, equal sign. Jake brings the woman to his small ranch on the outskirts of civilization. His robot helper, Rusty, is initially alarmed by the purple ore contamination. Jake sets up the woman in the spare room, gives her fresh clothes and food. She reveals her name is Elena, and she was a geologist before the contamination. Over the next few days, Jake notices strange things. His chronic pain from the cybernetic arm lessens when she's near. Old injuries stop aching. Rusty suffers a critical malfunction. A power coupling burns out, touches the damaged parts with her glowing purple-veined hands. Rusty's systems repair themselves impossibly, the damage undoing before Jake's eyes. Jake realizes the purple ore hasn't poisoned her. It's changed her, given her the ability to heal both organic and mechanical damage. Elena reveals she's been hunted by mining corporations who want to weaponize or study her abilities. Jake promises to protect her, but knows they'll come eventually. Equal sign, equal sign, equal sign, equal sign. PRT3, outline the hunters arrive. Equal sign, equal sign, equal sign, equal sign. 3 weeks pass peacefully. Elena helps Jake recover from old injuries he'd accepted as permanent. She begins to smile more, the silver in her eyes sometimes flickering back to brown. A corporate ship lands near the ranch. Representatives from Helix Corporation, the company that owned the mine where Elena was contaminated. They claim Elena as corporate property due to a contract she signed, demand Jake hand her over. Jake refuses. A standoff ensues. The corporate team includes a mercenary named Vex with advanced weapons and combat augments. A firefight breaks out. Jake uses his knowledge of the terrain and his old military skills to fight back. Jake is critically wounded. A plasma blast tears through his torso. Elena rushes to him despite the danger, her hands glowing bright purple as she heals the fatal wound. The corporation forces retreat temporarily, but promise to return with reinforcements. Jake and Elena realize they can't stay at the ranch. They need to run or fight. Elena reveals there are others like her in hiding. Survivors of purple ore contamination who developed abilities instead of dying. Equal sign. Equal sign, equal sign, equal sign. Part 4 outlined the choice. Equal sign, equal sign, equal sign. Jake decides to help Elena find the others and build a resistance against the corporations exploiting frontier workers. They travel to the abandoned deep mines where Elena first changed. There they find a small community of changed individuals living in the purple glowing caverns, each with different abilities. Jake learns the purple ore is actually a living crystalline organism that bonds with some humans instead of killing them. The corporations have known about this for years and have been creating contamination accidents to harvest people with abilities. Elena and the others ask Jake to help them expose the corporations and free other changed individuals. A massive corporate force arrives to purge the cavern and capture all the changed humans. Jake leads a desperate defense using guerrilla tactics and the unique abilities of Elena's people. Elena's healing abilities prove crucial, keeping fighters alive and even repairing weapons and equipment mid-battle. Jake realizes he's found a new purpose, not just surviving on the frontier, but fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. They win the battle, but no, it's just the beginning of a larger war. The story ends with Jake and Elena sending out a signal across the frontier, calling all changed individuals to unite. Jake reflects that he bought Elena expecting to give her a few comfortable final months, but instead she gave him a reason to live again. Final scene. More ships arrive, but these are filled with changed individuals answering the call, ready to fight for their freedom. The cowboy who wanted to be left alone has become a leader in a revolution, easier and a revolution, == story themes. Redemption and second chances, the exploitation of frontier workers by corporations, found family and community, power of compassion over profit, transformation, both literal and metaphorical, setting details, Dustfall Prime, a frontier mining planet with red deserts and purple ore deposits, technology level, mix of Old West aesthetics with sci-fi elements, speeder bikes, cybernetics, plasma weapons, society, lawless frontier where corporate power fills the vacuum of government authority, character development, Jake, from hopeless slave to discovering her worth and power, their relationship, based on mutual respect and shared purpose, not romance, though that could develop. The story combines classic Western themes, lone gunslinger, corrupt powers, frontier justice, with sci-fi elements, alien minerals, mutations, corporate villains, space technology,